If you're watching this video, you want to use a podcast to generate more leads for your business. Well, you might not even have a podcast and you just want to generate more leads for your business. So I promise you, this video is going to show you exactly how you can use a podcast to get more leads, more warm leads that are qualified and also will convert into sales. So before we get there, my name is Darren Lee. I'm CEO and founder of Voix. I'm also host of Kickoff Sessions. I've produced over 250 episodes of my own. I've generated over 40 million views. Within our company Voix, we've generated over 100 million views, over 10 million downloads. We've managed over 50 shows and we've coached over 200 shows. So hopefully, I can teach you one or two things around generating leads for your podcast and your business. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you exactly our process for doing this and how you can do this right now. So the main thing about getting leads in general is that the leads are either poor, to say the least, they're unqualified, or they don't have the right buying intent. So they may want to work with you, but they don't want to buy from you. This video is going to qualify and quantify that for you specifically. And the first thing for you to be able to do this is going to be about interviewing and going on shows that are your ideal persona. So let's give an example. If you run a sales podcast and you want to help organizations increase their sales and drive more revenue, well, the companies that you can interview and the guests that you can interview can be companies that you want to work with. So let's take the example of sales. And if you want to help companies scale their company, you can interview your ideal customer and basically be able to showcase them specifically that you are someone who's worth listening to, and you could even be the person that they work with. Now, it doesn't need to be this sleazy sales tactic, not at all. What you simply do is build a relationship with this person. So instead of messaging them on LinkedIn, being like, hey bro, I want to connect with you, instead you bring them on your podcast. You bring them into your world. You showcase them that you are someone who's worth listening to. And by virtue of doing that, you're actually going to be able to build a very strong connection with that individual. You'll be able to show that person specifically how you, yes, you are the person that can solve their problem. And if you do such a good job, you can build a relationship to be able to work with them afterwards. So they will see you straight away. That's the first thing, is actually interviewing people that your ideal customers, ideal persona is there. But also there's a second benefit to this, because if I interview my ideal customer, people who listen to the podcast will recognize that that ideal customer is also similar to them. So it's the relatability, the likeness, the social proof that you, as the sales podcast in this example, have interviewed founders that you could also help. So there's a very strong alignment between who you are, who you can help, and the listeners. Because not only are your ideal guests also your customers, but also your listeners can become your customers. It's a very, very strong ecosystem, which at Voix we call the ecosystem. It's bringing people into your world through free content with your podcast to be able to nurture relationships, build super strong relationships to be able to do this. Now, many of my existing clients have done this. Andrew Rohn in particular, he runs an SEO agency. The guy's a young dude, and he's been interviewing real estate agents across America because he helps them with website conversion, website SEO, and all that good stuff. He interviews his ideal customer. He gets them on the show. He shows them that he's not a potato and he knows his stuff. And as a result, they actually want to work with him. It builds his confidence and it builds his credibility in the market. I've also had another client, Tom Spark, who did the exact same messaging. He went after a lot of entrepreneurs that were in a similar bracket to him. He works in the branding space, and by interviewing a lot of big names in the space, he was able to showcase that he knew a thing or two about branding. And Tom did such a good job at this that he grew a brand and grew a business, and now we even work together. So he did such a good job, he even works together with me. So that's the beauty of a podcast, that it connects to people. And you also have to look at the story of where I'm at. Through my own podcast, through Kickoff Sessions, I had no network, no background, no really idea what I was doing. And the guests that I was interviewing, I wasn't trying to sell to, but I was able to build up my own credibility and also showcase that I was someone who maybe worth listening to. And a lot of my guests ended up asking me about their own specific podcast and the benefit a podcast could do for them. It's not about hard selling, it's about elegant social selling through a podcast. Which brings me to my second point, which is having a strong authority frame. If you can build a strong frame, a strong authority frame through the content that you're producing, you will be positioned in a market that you're able to solve a specific problem for a specific user that is easy to find online. So let's take the example of a sales podcast. If I'm someone who has all the receipts and credibility in sales, well, I can showcase that by having a podcast and positioning myself as the authority. I can talk about the different components of sales. I can tell my story. I can tell tactical, strategic advice that positions me as the key person of influence. And by virtue of doing that, I will be able to find the right tribe for people to come inbound to me. So these people will come inbound because they've listened to the podcast. They've been listening to learn from me specifically. And after listening to me specifically, they want to take the next step in the journey. That could be a low ticket product, a mid ticket product, a high ticket product, or just a book a call system. But you're able to be able to go direct to them and avoid sales calls, running ads, all the traditional marketing approach, which are pretty much becoming harder and harder to stand out. But there's only 4 million podcasts in the world, and only 300,000 of them have posted an episode in the last 30 days. That is less than 10% of podcasts have produced an episode in the past month. So let me ask you this. With your niche, with the problem that you solve, with your experience as an entrepreneur, can you stand out in that market? Of course you can. That is a simple answer to this. You can, of course, stand out. There's a room for everybody who is great at what they do. That is the main thing. That they are great at what they do. And if you have the experience and if you have the receipts, you will be able to go directly to your audience through your podcast, showcase that you are someone who's an authority figure, help a ton of people, mostly than anything else, help a lot of people. And as a result of helping a lot of people, they will want to take the next step with you in the journey. And the last point here, the third point, which is most important, is you going outbound to other shows that are in your niche that are either an ideal customer that you want to position and speak to, or their audience. So let's take an example. You are at a sales podcast and you go on other sales podcasts in your niche. So you show up with different founders, different companies, you go on these different podcasts to showcase your authority and your niche, okay? And by doing that, one, the host recognizes that you know your shit and they want to take the next step in working with you. But also the audience for that host also recognize that they want to work with you. These people come inbound. And instead of them just clicking on your landing page and clicking off and becoming redundant, they may go check out a few things. What will they check out? They'll check out your podcast. They'll see you on YouTube. They'll make sure it looks beautiful. And they'll see a very, very consistent pattern to go and work with you. So you can just show up a couple times a month on different podcasts, build your authority, grow your podcast, and do all of this without any pain and stress. Now look at the counter. Just imagine if you don't have a podcast and you have to do all of this manually. You'll have to run a bunch of ads, spend a ton of money, figure a lot of this out all on your own, or you can create your own brand, be able to bring people inbound to you, build a super strong network that actually sells on autopilot for you. So your biggest guests in the world can actually be your biggest customers. And that's very possible from a podcast because it's not sleazy, it's not getting people over the line, it's not kicking them through a funnel, it's just creating an ecosystem for them to want to go and actually take the next step with you. So that's the best approach, to be able to wrap all of this into an ecosystem. And we've been doing this for many years. I did this indirectly through kickoff sessions, just by virtue of just loving the content space, podcasting audiences. People wanted to come and see what else they could learn. We have many other clients that do this, where they're selling apps. People like Rob Lipset, they may be familiar with. He has positioned himself as an authority in the fitness space. And just by having a podcast that's called the same name as his podcast, The Game Plan, people come and want to work with him through fitness, nutrition, and health. And we've managed that show for many, many years. So my question for you is, if you were able to book more qualified calls and bring them much more into your ecosystem, would that help you? Also, would it be an enjoyable pursuit to interview people that you've always wanted to work with and have a very natural conversation and build a strong relationship with them? Would that also help you? And if the answer is yes to these questions, feel free to check out some of our work. The incubator is best suited for people that want to use this much more as a business. In the incubator, it's a full, all-out program with a dedicated client success manager to teach you the skills to generate more qualified leads for your podcast and grow the brand overall. But if your main objective is to grow your business, then the incubator is a perfect fit for you. It's a combination of ongoing weekly calls, weekly workshops, monthly masterminds with some of the biggest names in the world like Lara Costa, Rob Lipsett, Dakota Robertson, and many more, as well as over 30 hours of training material so you can build the right business on the back of your podcast. So if you found that helpful, feel free to check out the link right up here. Take the next step, check out more about the incubator, and we'd love to talk to you from there. And until then, hope you found this video valuable. And just to wrap up, you want to make sure that you're getting the right guests on your platform. You want to make sure you have the authority frame, and you want to make sure you're going on the right shows with the qualified audience that you want to get to. Thank you for watching the video, and hope to see you in Incubator soon.